When you're living in the realm of the good girl, you are not only hiding who you are, but you are also diluting the depth of your dreams. You're diluting the life that you actually want to create out there in the world. You're diluting the level of success that you actually want to have. You're diluting the financial dreams that you have. You're diluting this beautiful, epic love that you want to experience. You're diluting this fantastical dream life that you could have. Because there's parts of you that whisper every time you have a dream that's a little bit bigger, like, not too big. Don't ask for too much. Don't be selfish. Don't be silly. You can't do that alone. You need a man to do that. You're not actually good enough. You can't ask for that. You're not worthy. You're not deserving. Don't take up too much space. That's not for you. That's for other people. And those tiny little voices that are almost imperceptible are the things that will have you staying far too long in toxic relationships, challenging situations, lackluster friendships, boring sex lives, bodies that are aching and calling out for help. Because at your core, this version of yourself that has been infused with so many doubts, with so many toxic beliefs, is actually the one that's running the show. You're listening to the Heartbreak Alchemy Podcast with Alaska Wolf. You know, one of the most confronting things about being inside of a toxic relationship when you are also a really powerful, successful woman out there in the world is that it feels like it makes no sense, right? Because so much of your identity out there in the world is based around your strength, your power, your success, your ability to get shit done, your ability to make moves in the world, your ability to be brave and bold and just like create things. And then you come home and inside of your most intimate relationship, you're recognizing this kind of collapse that exists in your identity, in who you are, in the way that you move through the world. And it can be really confronting because it seems like it's such a dichotomy, because it feels like it makes no sense, right? Because you're this high achiever out there in the world, but then when you get home, you would close the door to your house, your apartment, and it's like everything is falling apart. And in our mind, it doesn't make any sense to us because we're like, if I can do all this out in the world where things should be harder, right? Because of patriarchy and because of society and like I'm a woman in the world, like it should be harder out in the world. It should be easier with a partner that's supposedly on my side. And yet when I get home, I'm in this collapse. My relationship is toxic. We're fighting all the time. It's push-pull. It's anxious avoidant. Our values don't align. We're not truly the right fit for each other, and yet we're not able to let it go or walk away. And this dichotomy can be really confusing because you start to question, like, which version of me is even real, you know? Like the version of me that's out there in the world making shit happen, is that the real me? Or is the real me this weak feeling woman that's in the house that's feeling resentful and she's feeling like her partner can't meet her? And like, who is it? Who am I? Who is the identity that I hold? Can I be both? And I know it was really confronting for me because when I was out there in the world, I could use my success and my power as a mask, really. This mask of perfection where I actually felt protected from the world. I felt like nobody could see in. I felt like nobody could really recognize my internal struggles. I even kind of hid those internal struggles from myself. Because when I was out there in the world, I could hustle and grind and just keep going and going and going. And like, that was the way that I kept myself safe. I really had this idea that if I could just achieve enough, if I could be enough, then finally things around me would fall into place. Like my love life would become better, my sex life would get better, my financial life would get better, like everything in my life would just magically change. But when I actually started to unpeel the layers as I was moving through this heartbreak, I started to recognize some things that were really surprising to me. Like those masks that I was wearing out there in the world of perfectionism, of power, of success, were also something I was bringing into my relationship. And what was really confronting for me was when I was going through my breakup, I started to recognize that those two versions of myself were not all that different. Because the version of myself that had gone out into the world and had created all this success and was really powerful and felt like she could do anything was the same as the version that I was at home in many ways. But I didn't code the two to be the same, because out there in the world, all of the internal struggles that I was dealing with were actually the things that allowed me to create success in the world as it's set up right now, in business as it's set up right now, in entrepreneurship as it's set up right now. So for example, if I look back at who I was at that moment in time, like I was so disconnected from my body. I literally lived in my head and only from the neck up, because I thought that's what you had to do in order to get ahead. And in many ways, it was what you had to do. You had to plan and strategize and think. You had to ignore your feeling. You had to ignore your body. You had to ignore the pain that you had when you were on your period, or the feeling of tiredness that would hold you back if you actually needed to like work harder and do more. I was really disconnected from my emotions because I always felt like my emotions would get in the way of my business, of my creation, of what I wanted to do in the world. And so I really pushed them down. I really allowed my needs to be on the back burner because I always thought like the hustle is more important. Like the hustle and grind of making my career move, of making my next step that I wanted to get to, all of those things, they really took precedence. And so I would push down what I was feeling on any given day. I would push down the stress and the anxiety and all of the things that felt like a distraction from what I was there to do in the world, which was sit at my desk every goddamn day and just keep going until I created the success that I wanted to in the world. And the sneaky part about this was that it worked. Like when I moved to Berlin, I moved there with a suitcase, my cat, and a whole lot of dreams. Like I wanted to work in music. I wanted to be a DJ. I wanted to start playing internationally. I wanted to play across Europe. I didn't have the dream of being an interior designer at that point, but when that opportunity arose, I gripped it with both hands. Because I trusted myself on some level. I knew that I was good at things. I had this confidence in my abilities to create and to make and to do in the world. And I got so much of my worth from that. Like there were so many elements of me creating businesses and success and being a DJ, being an interior designer, being a fashion designer that actually were like a little bit of a protective mask for me. Because I thought that other people would respect me if that was the thing. I thought they would love me if they liked what I did. I thought they would think I was cool if they saw that I was these things out in the world. And so on one hand, it was for me because I loved these things, but on the other hand, it was because I thought that other people would be impressed by them. And so throughout my time in Berlin, I created these incredible careers where I was booked and busy and I was making money and I was really out there in the world just like creating these things that didn't exist before I was there, you know? And I was really fucking good at both of them, which gave me so much validation. Like internally, it gave me so much validation, but mostly because of the external validation that it won me. Because in this world that we live in, this patriarchal world, all of us grow up with some level of conditioning about who we need to be and what we need to do in the world in order to be successful or chosen or belong or loved. And I know sometimes that can be difficult to acknowledge or to admit, you know, because we don't want to make our parents feel bad. We don't want to make the world around us, the people around us feel bad. But if you've grown up as a woman, as a girl inside of this society, you have a level of societal conditioning that teaches you to be a certain way. It actually teaches you that these are the characteristics of a good woman or a good girl. And so even though it might be difficult to recognize or admit that we've grown up with this good girl conditioning, it's just a part of the water that we swim in as women growing up in a patriarchal society. We've grown up with these messages implicitly or explicitly about who we should be if we want to be loved, if we want to belong, if we want to be successful in this world as women specifically. And men have their own conditioning. But the good girl conditioning that we receive, even if we thought like, oh, maybe we escaped it because our generation was liberated and free, we were still raised by a generation of women who did not have that luxury. Our mothers couldn't even have bank accounts until the 1970s. That's 55 years ago. That's in living memory. And so this good girl conditioning is something that has been brought forward over the generations. We've been under patriarchy for 5,000 years. And so layer upon layer upon layer upon layer upon layer, through the lineage of your ancestors, all of the ways that women were taught to shut down and hide and pretend and be different than who they are in order to be allowed to be in the society that they lived in. And that is the good girl conditioning that you hold the weight of now. Even as a modern woman in 2025, we hold the weight of that inside of our bodies, inside of our subconscious, inside of all of the conditioning, all of those tiny little micro moments where you were shut down or you were given the message implicitly or explicitly through words or through actions or through the way that you were treated, that you needed to be different in order to be acceptable in this world. And there's so many ways that it actually shows up for women, specifically in our generation. And so I just want to talk a little bit about what good girl conditioning actually looks like. Because I think a lot of the time, especially as women in this modern age in 2025, we can feel like, oh, the good girl is like this dutiful little girl that sits over in the corner. She never speaks out. She never says anything. She never argues with anybody. She's quiet and pleasing and pleasant, and she's nice to people, and she does for them. And like, I know for myself, I didn't really identify like that. And so in many ways, I had removed the possibility that I was affected by this type of conditioning from my mind, from my brain. Because I was this wild child, I was a middle child, and I was always just like doing whatever I want. I left home at 17 and went and traveled to Australia. I traveled all over the world. I moved to Berlin. I was a DJ. I was an interior designer. I was a fashion designer. Like, I didn't do things that were safe in my life. And so I thought, this couldn't be me. I didn't identify with it. I didn't think about it and think like, oh yeah, that's something that I have to deal with or think about or heal. Because I had just made unconventional choices in my life. But when you actually drill down on the subtle ways that this good girl conditioning shows up, this good girl conditioning that is born from the idea that you are not as good as a woman, that there are certain ways that you have to show up in order to be lovable, in order to be liked, in order to be chosen in this world. And so I want to talk about some of the really nuanced ways that this can show up, this good girl conditioning can show up. Because it's not just being this tiny little version of yourself that's silent. It's actually in the more nuanced moments where you are avoiding conflict. In the moments where you say yes instead of no. In the moments where you hide what you actually want or need because you don't want to be too much or not enough, or you want to be liked by somebody. It's the idea that you have to constantly be doing and creating and never sit down and never take rest because your productivity is what gives you your worth. It's actually the part of you that suppresses her anger instead of actually saying what she thinks and feels about any given situation or behavior. It's prioritizing others above yourself. It's being smaller in situations. It's being afraid of being selfish. It's this constant need for external validation to tell you that you are okay. It's this idea that you always have to be doing and giving for others, even if that means rescuing them or fixing them or choosing them, even when they are not your power match or somebody that can give back to you. It's the version of you that stays too long in situations because you feel like it's your duty to help others instead of pay attention to yourself and what you need. It's feeling responsible for the emotions in the room. It's feeling guilty for wanting more for your life, for yourself, for your finances, for your partnerships. It's the wanting to be chosen. All of these elements are part of the good girl conditioning that we grew up with, because these are the ways that we actually found safety in the world. We were conditioned to be this way since we were literally born. Like, there are quite literally studies that have been done that since infancy, boys and girls are treated so differently, that they grow up with different conditioning, with different expectations, with different versions of themselves that they should be. That girls are given very clear messaging that they need to be polite and considerate and accommodating of others, which actually extrapolates into their adult life, and then they find themselves these women that are people pleasers and pushing down their own needs. This is what good girl conditioning looks like in the wild. And what can be really challenging is that as a high achieving woman, as somebody that's successful and powerful, a lot of the ways that your good girl will show up will look like power. It will look like strength. Because you're the one that's over functioning and taking care of the household and your partner and your partner's needs and your partner's depression and helping your friends move and doing all of the things. Can show up as you actually having this externally perfect life. Perfect relationship, perfect apartment, perfect job, perfect success, perfect career, perfect money, all of the things. But inside, you have this dull ache because you know that the things that you've created are not in fact perfect. You know that you are struggling and having difficulty and not showing up in your truth. And that veil of perfection is actually the way that you protect yourself from the world. Because if you're perfect and you're strong, then you don't need help. Then you don't need people to take care of you. You don't need to be a bother to people. You don't need to tell them about your truth. You can suppress the anger. You can suppress the needs. And then people will like you. They'll choose you. They'll love you because you're easy. But this mask of perfection also keeps you separate from people. Because if you're going to go into relationships, but you also want to be perceived as perfect, you're always going to downplay what it is you want and need. You're going to downplay the importance of your boundaries. You're going to really allow your standards to drop because you don't want to have confrontation with people. And this is why a lot of women that are really successful and really powerful out there in the world, they're seen as this hyper-independent version of themselves. But this is part of the protection that we hold. It's part of the way that we actually feel safe in the world. And it doesn't seem like it makes sense because it's like, wow, I'm so fucking capable. And you're telling me that I'm a good girl? Like, how does that compute? But actually, it's the things that have made you successful. Your ability to handle everything and deny yourself and just keep going. Yes, it makes you successful out there in the world. But it can really wreak havoc inside of your interpersonal relationships. Like your romantic relationships, your friendships, your lovers. Even inside of your sex life. Right? Because if you've spent the rest of your life, if you spend all of your working life and all of your love life trying to push down what you actually want and need, try and push down your emotions, try and push down the boundaries, try and pretend that the standards aren't so high, then what are you going to have to do to achieve that? Cut yourself off from your body. Cut off from the sensations that are telling you when things are a yes or things are a no because you're going to step over those boundaries yourself. Cut off from the emotions that are telling you that this person isn't right for you or the thing that they've just done has really hurt you. You're going to cut off from the way that your body feels and the intuition that is showing up that is telling you to go in one direction or another, but you don't want to because the mask of perfection might slip from your life. And so all of these things are really impacting every part of your life. Love, sex, relationships, friendships, family life. Out there in the world as well, like we might feel like we're getting where we want to go. We are successful and powerful in the world, but at what cost? Because I know in my own life, the way that it showed up was a bleeding ulcer. Because there's this really powerful saying, and it's like, if you're not going to listen to the whisper, then the universe is going to send you a tsunami. And I can promise you, that's for fucking sure. Because when I was going through that toxic relationship and I was also trying to hustle and grind, like I ended up starting to have real problems with my stomach. There was something wrong and I was not really paying attention to it. I would walk up 2 flights of stairs to get to my apartment and I would have to lie down on the floor for 10 minutes when I got up there. And I was like, this is fine. You know that meme where it's like, this is fine. They're sitting in a burning building. That was me. I was like, this is fine. And then one day I went to the doctor for something else. I think it was like a UTI that I had. And I went to the doctor to get some medicine for this UTI. And on the way out the door, I was like, well, I've been vomiting like projectile vomiting when I'm out walking my dog. I'm really tired. I don't know what's going on. My doctor said, let's do some tests, some blood tests. And she called me at 8 o'clock that night and she was like, you need to go to the emergency room. You are bleeding out. Bleeding out like you could die. Like there is not enough blood in your body to sustain life. And I recognized in retrospect, for so long I had been ignoring my body. I had been pretending everything was fine because I did not want to be a bother. I didn't want to have to deal with it. I didn't want to be a burden. I didn't want to ask for help of like, I have to go to the hospital. Even when I had to go to the hospital that night, I was like, who's going to take care of my dog? Is somebody going to help me? Like, I didn't know who to reach out to because I was so entrenched in this good girl conditioning. Even as a woman with her own interior design studio, as a woman that was playing international DJ shows, like it did not compute. But ultimately, a bleeding ulcer was the cost. It was the cost of constantly suppressing myself and my truth in all of these little micro moments. Inside of my relationship, inside of my sex life, inside of my work life, inside of contract negotiations, everywhere. I found it everywhere. Little moments in my life where I was jumping over myself, where I was saying yes when I meant no, when I was doing things that just didn't really feel good to me because I wanted to please the other person. And it was so deeply ingrained. I thought I was being a good person. I thought I was being helpful. I thought I was being a good friend. I thought I was being what a girlfriend was supposed to be. But I didn't realize that I was doing it all because I thought that I had to perform who I actually was in order to get people to choose me, to love me, to be with me, to stay with me. But what's really interesting is that so often people think that their toxic relationship is the problem. But if I have learned anything in the past few years, healing from my own toxic relationship, working with so many incredible women to heal after theirs, to step into this incredible new life, it's that toxic relationships are never the problem. They are a symptom of the problem. Because a toxic relationship is a symptom of you chronically self-abandoning. It's a symptom of you not feeling truly worthy to be who you actually are in this world and be loved and be chosen and belong. It's a symptom that you don't actually love yourself. It's a symptom that you will step over your own needs and dreams and desires to prioritize somebody else. It's a symptom of the fact that you have all of these beliefs and thoughts and identities that are born of the good girl conditioning that you have been raised in. Like the water that we swim in, we have been raised in this culture where women are pushed down. Subtly, sometimes so subtly, but just this pervasive feeling that you're not quite good enough as you are, and you're definitely not as good as a man. And so the way that you can get ahead in this world is to defer to men or become one. And that's why so many women that I work with, and myself included, like some of the most important healing that I did in my life was to reconnect with my femininity. And sometimes people think, oh, what, like, do I have to wear a dress, or like I have to be different than who I am? No. Reconnecting with your femininity is reconnecting with your authentic self. It's reconnecting with your sensations and your emotions and the way that you actually want to be in this world. It's reconnecting with your truth, with your intuition, with your creativity, with all of these parts of yourself that are so innate to you because you have been born a woman. And that's actually where there's so much power, because instead of trying to become somebody that you're not, you actually get to relax. Finally. You don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to perform anymore. You don't have to be different than you are. You just have to tap into the truth of who you are. You have to tap into those needs and those desires and those dreams. You have to tap into what it feels like in certain situations, whether your intuition is a yes or a no. You have to tap into the emotions that tell you if this is the right person for you or not. Is this the right choice for you or not? Is this the right life for you or not? That's what it means to tap back into your femininity. Because the last thing that you want to do is have tapping into your feminine energy be another performance. What you actually want to do is find those parts of yourself that are so innate, to deem them worthy again, to love them again, to bring them back into yourself, to stop feeling the need that you have to disown these parts of yourself because they're not as good, that they're not as worthy, that they're not as deserving, they're not as lovable. Because when you're finally willing to actually be who you truly are, you can let go of so many things. You can let go of the resentment that builds up in your relationships, in your sex life, in your love life, in your friendships, in your business. Because the thing about it is, when you are living outside of yourself, when you're living as a different version of yourself, inside of your relationships, inside of your sex life, with this mask of perfection that you feel you need to keep up at all moments, you are going to be walking through life just feeling so disconnected from yourself. You'll be in toxic relationships where you feel unseen and unfulfilled. You'll be in friendships where you don't actually receive anything. You don't receive care. You don't receive the love that you give. You'll be in relationships that are non-reciprocal, where you're so frustrated because you're like, I give everything to this fucking person, and they can't even show up to do XYZ. There's so much resentment that builds up in those kind of relationships. And those relationships are not just in friendships or loverships or sex. It's also the relationship you have with everything in your life. Because if you are in business, if you are creating a world around you because of the business that you run, but you feel like your needs are not truly met, if you feel you're constantly stepping over your boundaries, if you are letting your standards go down for the way that you live because of the needs of your business, like all of these things are so intertwined because it's the same pattern that's happening everywhere. And that's something that I say to clients all of the time. Like, you might think that this pattern is only existing inside of your toxic relationship and that's the thing that you're here to fix. But no. Because the way that you show up in relationships is the way that you show up in sex. The way that you show up in sex is the way you show up in your business or in your career. Because these actions are underpinned by who you think you are, by what you think you are, by the thoughts you think, by the beliefs you hold, by the somatic experience that happens when you're in a certain kind of situation, good, bad, tense. Just that automatic body response of like fight, flight, freeze, fawn. By the subconscious conditioning that you've been receiving since the moment you were born, that has pushed you to be one way or another, one version of yourself or another. And so when I was going through my heartbreak and I started to recognize these patterns that were existing in every facet of my life, inside of my toxic relationship, inside of my sex life, inside of my friendships, inside of my business, inside of my relationship with my parents, inside of my relationship with my family, I was so shook. Because I had thought that the way that I was moving through life was the way it was supposed to be done. Stay in your head, be good to people, do whatever they want, always try and say yes, always try and be like agreeable and pleasing and nice. And I thought that was how I got to be a good person. But it was costing me so goddamn much. Not just in the relationships where I was showing up inauthentically, but also in the scope of my life. And this is something that's so important that I think so many people don't actually talk about. But that when you're living in the realm of the good girl, you are not only hiding who you are, but you are also diluting the depth of your dreams. You're diluting the life that you actually want to create out there in the world. You're diluting the level of success that you actually want to have. You're diluting the financial dreams that you have. You're diluting this beautiful, epic love that you want to experience. You're diluting this fantastical dream life that you could have. Because there's parts of you that whisper every time you have a dream that's a little bit bigger, like, not too big. Don't ask for too much. Don't be selfish. Don't be silly. You can't do that alone. You need a man to do that. You're not actually good enough. You can't ask for that. You're not worthy. You're not deserving. Don't take up too much space. That's not for you. That's for other people. And those tiny little voices that are almost imperceptible are the things that will have you staying far too long in toxic relationships, challenging situations, lackluster friendships, boring sex lives, bodies that are aching and calling out for help. Because at your core, this version of yourself that has been infused with so many doubts, with so many toxic beliefs, is actually the one that's running the show. It is the glass ceiling above your head, and it is the quicksand beneath your feet. And it's the reason that so many women struggle in their lives, in their love lives, in their relationships, in their friendships, in their family life, in their businesses, in their careers. Because those tiny little imperceptible voices are actually the ones running the show. Because in the moments where you are about to take the next big leap to the next big level of your life, those voices come forward. And this is why so many women can struggle in their lives. Because even when they are making these bold moves in their life, where they are making change, where they are dreaming of what they want their next level to look like, they are already diluting it, doubting themselves, not feeling worthy, not loving themselves enough to move through the hardships that it's going to take. And it's why healing these core elements that are revealed by the relationships and the heartbreaks that we move through is so goddamn powerful. I will never stop saying this, but the heartbreak that you are moving through right now is a motherfucking gift. It's a gift because it is revealing to you every single place you are willing to abandon yourself, every part of yourself you don't actually love fully, all of the elements of yourself that you've been hiding and suppressing and pushing off to the side so that you could choose other people. All of the elements of yourself that get lost and abandoned because you're constantly worrying in your mind instead of recognizing to drop down into your body. It's all of the parts of you that are happening inside of your body, the sensations, the emotions, the feelings, the pleasure that you are not in connection with because you've decided at some point in your history that being in your mind was the only safe space, and now your body is just a numb wasteland. And this was me too, for the longest time. That's why things had to get so fucking bad in my life before I made any move to make change. Because my body was just so used to being on high alert. I just got used to it. I got acclimatized to it. And the response of my body was to go really numb. So that even when things were crazy in my life, I just felt it as like medium grade anxiety, you know? But what it was costing me on the other side was like, my body was so numb that I couldn't feel anything during sex. Because all of the suppression it took to only feel medium grade anxiety when actually what should have been like an Amber Alert, things are about to explode here kind of anxiety was. And this is why so much of the work that I do with women inside of the Essentialist or inside of my continuation container is not just through the mind. It's not just through understanding like you might go by going to talk therapy. It's also by engaging the subconscious, all of those beliefs and the thoughts and the conditioning that have propelled you to become a certain type of woman in this world. It's through the body to actually connect with your nervous system, with those patterns of body when things are happening in your world, the fight, the flight, the freeze, the fawn. The nervous system activation that actually draws you like a magnet towards certain people or situations or experiences. Even though they might not be something that's healthy for you, that's good for you. But you're like a homing signal for familiarity inside of our nervous system, inside of your body. And so you have this overwhelming urge that what to the untrained eye can feel like intuition. It can feel like chemistry. But what it is that it's the alarm bells of your nervous system seeking home, even if home was unsafe. And this is why working with sensuality and sexuality like we do inside of the Essentialist or any of my containers is so potent. Because your sensuality and sexuality gets to become this beautiful, safe microcosm for you to reconnect with the truth of who you are. To go in and learn to love yourself so fully. To feel so deeply worthy of the life and the love and the sex and the feeling that you want in your life. It gives you this place to reconnect with what it feels like inside of your body. The yes, the no, the pleasure, the boundary, the standard. To recode all of that into yourself so that you can take all of that from your sensuality and sexuality and that private sacred experience that you create with yourself of drawing back all parts of you to yourself. And then you get to go out into the world with those embodied standards as what you hold. Not because you can think your way there and think like this is my standard, but because in the most intimate, quiet moments that you have created with yourself in pleasure, you have embodied it at a body level. And that is such a game changer, because we would love it to be so easy that we just say, this is my new standard. And then we would walk out into the world and everything would just like magically domino effect reflect that. But we both know that if it was that easy, we would be walking through this world without a problem in the world. But the truth is, 95% of the time we are working from our subconscious thoughts, beliefs, identities. All of those parts of yourself that have felt less than and unworthy and undeserving, like you couldn't love yourself. We're working from the level of the nervous system where we are just drawn to what's familiar instead of what we actually want. And this is why people find themselves in cycles in their life. You know, have you ever had an issue or a relationship or a kind of person in your life that just seemed to keep on appearing? On some level, we have this repetition compulsion that we actually want to recreate the same feelings, the same scenarios that we've been through in the past, because our desire is to heal. But in doing so from this unconscious place, it actually is really impossible for us to find the healing that we truly want. Because we're choosing situations that are exactly like the past, with people that can't meet us, with situations that are not safe for us. And so we find ourselves in these repeating portals, trying to find our way out to healing. But what we actually need to do is to recode and heal from the very deepest layers of ourselves. And then when we see that situation or that person in the future, to make a different choice, a conscious choice. Because we're no longer working from the level of the subconscious or the level of the nervous system that's just like a homing signal. Back to that, looking for the healing that you so deeply crave. And the most exciting bit about all of this is when you break the patterns, every fucking thing in the world becomes possible. And I'm living proof of this. Because if you would have told me a few years ago, in the depths of my toxic relationship with a man that wanted an open relationship, where there was no safety, where there was constant conflict, where there was all of this love, but it was all mixed with so much pain, that if I would just say yes to the healing that I was being drawn to do, then my entire fucking life would change. That I would be sitting in this beautiful house on a mountain, on a tiny island in Thailand, where I've created a beautiful life with beautiful connections and sisterhood and intimate connections, where I feel so fulfilled by the work that I do, where I get to step to the next level, where I get to have this beautiful life that actually feels so good, that feels so fulfilling, that feels so nourishing, so aligned, that I would get to have this beautiful business and work with so many incredible soul-aligned clients that I recognize myself in so deeply, that I get to make money that I would never have even dreamed possible for myself. That over and over and over, I would raise the standard for what my life looked like. That I would step from next level to next level to next level. And my scope of possibility only ever gets bigger. Because the more that I come home to myself, the more I love myself, the more worthy I feel, the more deserving I feel. The more I drop down into my body, into my sensations, my emotions, my pleasure. The more that I follow my internal compass instead of looking for external validation. The more that I show up as my true authentic self in the way I move, in the way I talk, in the way I sing, in the way I dress, all of the things. The more me I become, the more I feel like I am capable and able and ready to step to the next level of my life, to expand, to evolve, to become. And this is reflected in the whole world that I'm creating around me. Over and over and over, I'm just feeling like I'm in this upward spiral, because that's what true healing is. As you become more yourself, the world around you reflects that right back to you. And the more beautiful that you can see yourself to be, the more beautiful your life becomes on the outside. And that's why this work is so goddamn powerful. This is why I am literally obsessed with the women that are moving through my Essentialist program. Because they are so incredibly powerful. They are creating selves that they never even thought that they could be. They're creating lives that are beyond anything they ever imagined. They are healing so deeply that they will never abandon themselves again. Because they're doing the deep healing work that not only changes their life, but it is the cycle breaker in their lineage. From generations of women that were taught a certain thing about themselves, that they needed to be a certain version of themselves. They needed to be smaller and more pleasing and more palatable. They needed to be different than who they were. The women that are going through the Essentialist program and that continue to work with me, they are the cycle breaker in their family. Because the next generation, should they choose to have children, will not be affected by the same conditioning that is passed down unconsciously from woman to woman. You know, one of the most poignant things that one of my mentors ever said to me was like, the fastest way to disempower generations of women is to teach them to hate themselves. And to have them, those women, teach that same self-hatred to their daughters. And that's what's been happening for hundreds and thousands of years. Generation after generation after generation of woman has passed down what she was taught. And so our generation, the women that are choosing to work with me, the women that are choosing to move through the Essentialist, they are the cycle breaker. They are the one that says, this is how it was before, but this ends with me. Because not only am I going to make new choices for me, and not only am I going to create this incredible life that reflects the way that I think about myself, the way I feel about myself, the identity that I hold in this world, I'm going to be the butterfly effect on the rest of the world. I'm going to teach my daughter, I'm going to teach my niece, I'm going to teach the women around me to love themselves, to see themselves as worthy, to truly be in connection with their authentic self, their femininity, their emotions, their sensations, their pleasure, their power. All of the things that actually allow them to choose and create and build a fucking beautiful life. Because that's what it's all about. Being somebody that is so authentically yourself that the love you have, the sex you have, the relationships you have, the money you have, the business you have, the career you have, it all reflects the level to which you love yourself. You back yourself. You are true to yourself. Because that's what it's all about. So I think I'm going to leave this one here. Thank you so much for being with me today. I hope that this podcast has been powerful for you, inspirational for you. I hope that you've resonated with the things that I've been speaking about. I also would love it if you did find value in this podcast, that you can rate, review, and share this podcast on your Instagram. Share it with another woman out there in the world that feels like the heartbreak that she's moving through might be the end of her, when actually it's going to be the thing that radically shifts her entire life, if she's willing to choose the work that she is being presented with in this heartbreak, the work of healing, the work of becoming truly, authentically her. Also, if you're interested in working with me, you can always reach out to me on Instagram. You can find all of my details in the show notes and more information about my program, The Essentialist, the most beautiful portal that allows women to move from heartbreak to their highest goddamn timeline, to the life that they are meant to be living in this world, to the self that they are meant to be being, to the love they're meant to be experiencing, to the sex that they're truly destined to have in this world, to the next level of their life where everything becomes possible. This is the work that we do inside of The Essentialist. This is the work that we do in my world. And so if you've been listening to this podcast, resonating with me, feeling called to do this work, then reach out to me. I would love to meet you because this truly is the most important work in the world, and I can't wait to guide you through. Thank you so much for being with me here today. You've been listening to the Heartbreak Alchemy Podcast with Alaska Wolf.